3, 2.
I got everybody pregnant with Barry Katz and Iseman.
I'm not comfortable with the tone this is taking.
If you're undeniable, you will not be denied.
If you want to be successful in show business, you get yourself a Jew white manager like Barry Katz.
Being a manager is just turning no's into yeses.
Creating holy shit moments. Undeniable.
You're fucking firing me up, Katz.
I love this man.
Is there anything else I should know?
You're on. What? Now I'm on the air. Barry Katz back in the house. Let's do this.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited today. What an honor. Please welcome my guest today, Matt Iseman.
Thanks, Barry.
You're in.
I feel like you're emceeing here. It's nice. Brought me on the main stage.
It's unbelievable. Iseman like Heisman. You look like you posed for the Heisman Trophy.
So you see me run. I run like molasses. It's
I look
pathetic.
like I posed for bowling trophies.
You look like the dude.
The dude? The
Yeah,
dude who...
Big Lebowski.
Okay, I'll take it. Look at... If I look at the main shot, it's like I literally look like a little person next to you. It's unbelievable.
Well, you're pimping me up here, Barry. I'm feeling good about myself now.
Look at that shirt. It looks like you... it's like colors not found in nature in that shirt. It's unbelievable.
Masters Green, I think is what it's called.
Masters Green?
Yeah, I got to go to the Masters. This wasn't from the Masters, but I got to go for the first time ever, and it was a little slice of paradise out there.
You know, there's something about you that's so strange. You know, you picture a guy who's been through hell and back. You don't picture him looking like The Rock with hair. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel. I feel like I'm in a good place. So, I feel like I feel like I'm hitting my stride in Hollywood. Although my career may say otherwise.
Your career may say otherwise. What I have you here for is because you represent a segment of the population that's very rare. The long-term host of a television show. We are here because we don't get to talk to that many people who are hosts of television shows who are successful. It's a very rare breed.
Yeah.
So I thought that it'd be a unique situation if I talked to somebody who actually won an Emmy as opposed to somebody who just was nominated for an Emmy.
It's an honor to be nominated, Barry.
It's an honor to win.
That's what losers say.
That's true. Thank you. But, you know, it's like, so you're hitting your stride. Why do you think you're hitting your stride?
I think I think the longer you're in the business, it's such a fleeting business for the most part. And you've been part of countless projects, movies, TV shows, and things that just getting on a TV show on the air is a home run. And none of the people understand the funnel that starts with the amount of shows that are pitched, and then the ones that are sold, and then the ones that are actually shot and get notes, and then the ones that actually air, and the ones that even make it and air all their episodes in a season and get a pickup. And so I think having been a part of a show like Ninja Warrior, we're starting our 16th season is going to start broadcasting in June. It has been such a roller coaster ride that I've just kind of been holding on to. And it's fun. So I talked to my co-host. We were just Akbar Bajubiamila, and I started in season 2. He started in season 5. And one of the things I told him was at the end of every season, I just stop and I say, hey man, let's just take a minute and let's be really appreciative, because we might not come back. You never know. No matter how successful you are, you know, in this business, things change. Someone else comes in or a show comes along that makes yours obsolete. And so now heading into season 16, it has been, and particularly I think kind of getting through the pandemic and getting through this shift as, you know, we're watching the death of broadcast TV, even as we're on it. And I was just talking to your producer, Dennis, about how
Dennis getting a shout out.
He gets a shout out over here. Dennis over here with the New York accent.
If only there was a camera on Dennis, it'd be all set here.
He seems very shy. I'm kidding. I think we're seeing how this new generation, kids in their 20s and younger, they don't watch TV. They watch it on their phone. They watch TikTok. And so I think what's going to be interesting is in these next few years, is seeing how does this industry respond? How does a show like Ninja Warrior, I think we've been very fortunate with kind of the format of our show, not through conscious choice, but that our show you can watch for 2 hours or you can watch one run in 3 minutes. And so I think we have a show that's very digestible, where you can jump in the middle and figure out what's going on, as opposed to, I love watching Big Brother, but if you jump in the middle of the season, you're like, who are these people? What's going on here? It's a show where it requires such a big investment. And I think the era of shows, and Big Brother still does it 3 nights a week for 3 months. It's getting harder and harder to find shows that can sustain that people are willing to commit that much time to it. So I feel like Ninja Warrior has been an unbelievable gift. And what's been great is all the other opportunities that it's opened up, through people knowing who I am, or just even through NBC and Peacock. I'm going to be covering the Olympics. It'll be my 3rd Olympics, and that came about because it's all NBC. And so when I talk about feeling like my career's hitting its stride, I think I've gotten a lot more comfortable feeling like, hosting wise, I've done a lot of different shows. I feel like there's pretty much nothing that I can't do. I feel like you can throw me into any hosting situation, and either I've done it or I can figure it out. And I think that's a really good place to be, is when you feel really capable and competent. Now I'm like, I don't mind. I've done live shows. We did a show for A&E, Live Rescue, where we'd be following 10 departments around the country. You know, I've got guys in my ear. We're going out and someone's in my ear as we're throwing to one place, like, we can't go there. We're heading out to Fresno now. And that kind of, you do it enough and you get to the point where you're like, all right, there's nothing that can be thrown my way that I feel like I can't handle. And I think that's why it feels good. Anytime I go in for hosting, I'm like, you might not like me, but if you want something in that area, I'm going to be the best version of me that there is.
Who do you look at on television as a host and you say, God, you know, I'm f***ing good, but this person is there's them and there's everybody else?
That's well, I guess Ryan Seacrest is a guy who's very different than I am. I think he's more the button down, very straight guy. But when I watch the amount of stuff he does, you know, when he was doing Live with Kelly, when he was doing Idol, when he was doing his radio show, I had such an appreciation for the volume of work that guy's doing. Because it is, when you're hosting, you are on. It's like stand-up. When you're on, and you're giving everything. And so for him to be able to do that, I had a tremendous respect for the volume he was doing.
I remember when I was working with Dane Cook and we did the finale of American Idol. It was a live show. And I'm just walking around the control area and looking at the rehearsal, and Ryan Seacrest isn't at the rehearsal. It's a live show. He's not at the rehearsal. They have somebody else running through the stuff. I'm like, where's Ryan Seacrest? How is he going to figure this whole thing out? Nowhere to be found. It's like literally like 10 minutes before the show starts, and I'm just walking around the control area, and then I just hear his voice, yeah, Joe, could you run through the teleprompter with me for a second? And then you'd see Joe just putting the teleprompter and he'd just be looking over his shoulder. Okay. Okay. And just like that. All right, Joe, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then 30 seconds and just goes right out there. It's like nothing, you know.
And I think that's when you get to that point where you're like, I've done this. He knows he's done this. And I think when you've been through when everything goes wrong and you still find a way to survive, you're like, oh, and ultimately also you realize, okay, say I totally screw up, say I forget what I'm saying. Nobody dies. The world doesn't end. And I think that's where comedy comes in handy, having done stand-up, where it's like when a joke bombs, everyone knows it. When you just own it and you acknowledge it, everyone's like, oh, okay. I always say, I think the audience is kind of looking at you to see how you handle it. And as long as you're still giving them that sense of like, I'm in control, even if everything's falling apart right now. Everyone's like, that's okay. We'll go on the ride with you. Even if it's towards a fiery pit, we're on board. We trust you to take us there.
Now, one of the things I've had a lot of artists that I represent who've hosted shows. Bill Bellamy has hosted thousands of shows.
Yeah.
Jay Moore has hosted tons of shows.
I love Jay Moore.
And one of the things that Bill used to tell me when he auditions and tests for a game show, the thought process always is like, okay, you're a comedian, you should really go into this test and be funny. But they don't give a shit if you're funny. They know you're going to be funny. They
Right.
want to see you can run the game.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make the mistake when they go in for auditions for hosting jobs, is that they think that they have to be funny and they always have to be on, when in turn, the people want to know you can run the game.
100%. You really have to be a traffic cop, and you have to understand the mechanics, and you have to understand there are time constraints. You can't do a 5-minute monologue in a show when you're like, hey, we've got 20 seconds there. And we don't want to have to edit that. You have to understand these are the constraints. This is, know when a commercial break is coming up, know how to cut out of it, know when to salvage something, know when to immediately, if you're recording, say, that wasn't good, let me just pick it right up and give you a clean take, or later just give that reaction. And I think that comes with understanding what the show is. And I think I remember my very first audition for hosting was a show called Screenplay, which was a knockoff of Fear Factor. And it was on E. And the audition was, they took me to Pan Pacific Park right
This is
over
your
by...
first audition as a host.
As a host.
Okay, so just don't lose your place.
Put a pin in it.
What are you doing right before that? Are you auditioning for acting jobs?
Stand-up comedy, commercials, and I was doing stuff at the Groundlings.
Okay, so
And
you were...
I thought I was going to be a sitcom actor, is what I was. I wanted to be Will Ferrell. I wanted to be hilarious, funny SNL guy. And so I was kind of working towards comedy, and I was at the Groundlings when someone saw me, and he said, hey, can I submit you for this game show?
He was an agent? Or
He was a manager. And I was sure, because I'd had commercials, I had things about him, a steady gig, and I'm like, of course. I'm a big believer in say yes to everything until you can afford to say no. And so they did an audition. They took me out. I think it was just like we went to a room and you did your first audition, then, and the callback was out at Pan Pacific Park, and he's like, okay, these two people are going to play a game of horse. Announce it. And that was it.
So they didn't tell you what was going to transpire.
They were like, they were literally like, just take
But
these two people.
You didn't have any direction beforehand to prepare. They just told
No.
you when you got there.
And so I ended up getting it, and the guy,
Now, you got it on one audition test, or you had to come back over and over again?
I think this was the callback, and I can't remember the first one. I think they might have had a script or something where it was kind of read this copy, make it your own, and throw to some things. And so I think that this was the executive producer, though. What he said was, we need to know you can run, you understand how a game runs. And so he just chose the most basic game of horse, but he's like, all right, announce it. And he wanted to see, can you be funny? Can you describe what's going on? But can you keep track of the action? Because what he said was just what you were saying. The funny will come. We need to know you can actually host this show. We need to know you understand what's going to be going on in this competition, even though it wasn't the actual show. The show was like Fear Factor, where there were stunts and things going on. But he said, we just need to know you can understand how to build the drama, when the moment is, when to stop and go, okay, right now there's, it's HORS. This next one you could lose. Like, do you understand that this is the moment when now you get serious? You don't do the jokes because this is when the $10,000 is on the line. And I think it's just understanding the mechanics of what the show needs. And people want to know that. They want to know, like, what Bill Bellamy, I think, was saying is, we need to know not just can you be funny, but can you be funny at the right times? Can you be serious at the right times? Can you service the show? Because ultimately, as the host, you're facilitating whatever's going on. You need to understand what that is and how best to do that.
Got it. And so you do that pilot. Does it get picked up?
It got picked up.
Okay. How many episodes?
10 episodes.
Got it. So, and you were the singular host.
Singular host.
Okay. And so you're doing that, and are you thinking to yourself, this is like seamless for me. Like, I can't believe how easy this is.
I think I was very gratified in that I felt I can do this. And I think that, but the thing I did was I would prepare my ass off. I would do all my homework on, and it was a silly premise of a show, right? We would take scenes from movies and create stunts out of them, make people eat tongue like in Dances with the Wolves where you're eating something gross. And it was kind of that fear factor element, some of the gross stuff. But I would make sure I understood, all right, who are these competitors? What's their backstory? What's the point of this game? What are the challenges? Where can it go wrong? So that you understood it. And I think that for me, I'm someone who I like to feel prepared and then be ready for anything. So you kind of have that sense of, I don't care what happens, I'm going to be ready for it.
Preparation.
It really is, I think, and that's something, Ninja Warrior now, even in season 16, like I understand what goes on, but I will spend, the weeks leading up to it researching all the athletes. I'll talk with our stunt people. I'll learn our obstacles. When we're out there on the course, you walk the course, you talk to the people who've gone through it, say, what are the challenges here? So you have a little more insight to give because you've done your homework.
Do you get upset sometimes when you're co-hosting a show and you realize that your co-host isn't as prepared as you are?
I used to be. It used to be one of those things, and I think pretty quickly you realize it's not your call. That's someone else's decision. And what I found was when you get concerned with that, when you get upset or you try to show it up or you try to, if you're kind of giving a little fuck you to them, ultimately I think that ends up backfiring. And a lot of times, it doesn't serve the show if there's tension, unless that's the whole point, is that you guys are supposed to be adversarial. But even still, there's got to be a give and take. And so I think it's kind of one of those things where your job, you can't control them. So your job is like, all right, where are they coming up short? Where can I pick them up? And I think one of the things that I've been good at, I've been the lead host on a lot of shows, but I've also been on Hallmark's Home and Family, which was kind of a morning show where I was a bit player, and to know your role there where it's like, hey, someone else is hosting. When they throw to you, knock it out of the park and then give it back. Know your role there and know what you're supposed to do. And because you see people who sometimes will come in and try to say, I'm taking over. And it's like, hey, man, good for you, but that's not what the show needs. And most likely what you're going to end up doing is just turning everyone off and being like, hey, you're great, but you can't work as part of a team. You can't work on this ensemble. You don't understand what the show needs. You're about yourself.
Your co-host now on the show. If I put you both in a soundproof booth, no one could hear the answer. But the question is, who's a better host? What would each one of you say?
Well, the pause lets you know, I think it's me. Here's what I would say. I'm very good technically. I think I'm very good at controlling a show. That's not his role. I'm the one who's supposed to be kind of setting the structure. What he does, unbelievably, he brings in his energy and perspective very well. And what's really nice is we've been working together for over a decade is we've found the give and take. We found the game in it, right? We found where each of us likes to.
So he's a better color commentator and you're a better kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think we've both ended up finding out like, all right, we do what we do. We know what the other one does. And we make room for each of us to do that. And I think that's what you're looking for, where it's not who's better, it's who makes the show better. Because it's one of those things where it's like, hey man, you're the best host, but that show sucked and it's canceled. I would much rather be one where people are like, you're okay, but you make everyone else around you better and that show keeps going. Like we were talking about Emmys. Listen, it's really nice to get awards, but what's so much better is to have a show stay on the air. Because I know a lot of people who won Emmys and a show got canceled. And that trophy does not pay the bills. So I think it's one of the, you quickly recalibrate your ego, I think, in this business to to say, you know, it's not about getting my spotlight or my accolades. It's about making sure whatever project I'm on is better. Because the other thing you realize, and even though Ninja Warrior is heading into its 16th season, everything ends. The job you have now will not be the last job you have in entertainment. So your goal is also to say, when this ends, will someone else want to work with me? Will someone else say, I like what he does? Will someone I've worked with go, I got a new project, you'd be good for that? Because I think that, you know, I talk about the Kardashians, where when I was starting out on screenplay, they were just starting out with Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And so we did a lot of press together. And then as some of the other shows I did were all in that Comcast family. And I remember them, the PR people, we'd do events and we'd kind of be like, oh, they're so interesting. They live their lives out there. And the PR people were like, they are the hardest working people we've ever represented. They will show up. They will do any interview. They will stay. They will take the smallest interview. They were relentless because they understood we're promoting this show. The show stays on the air. It's good for us, because there are a lot of people who are divas who say, I don't want to do press. I'm amazing. Go sell the show. And I've become friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger and gotten to see him up close. And he's written numerous books. And in the books, he always says, one of your main jobs is to sell what you do. So it doesn't matter if it's good. It matters if people see it. And he's still a guy who, he just had a book come out in his documentary, and he was out every podcast. He was traveling the country. He was traveling the world to promote it, because he knows it's amazing to have something great, but if nobody knows it's out there, it doesn't really matter.
It's really great advice that he has in terms of that, and I've heard him say that many times, and it's just incredible the kind of career that he's had, and I know he's a big inspiration of yours. It's
been one of it's certainly the highlight of my Hollywood career, was getting to go on Celebrity Apprentice and getting to know him, and then becoming friends with him, and then now
didn't you win Celebrity?
I won. Nobody knows it. Which,
what do you mean nobody?
Well,
knows?
because
you didn't publish it like Arnold said you should.
No, if you recall, there was a boss before who'd gone on to another job, and because of that, our show, But so the show came out when we were filming. He hadn't won the nomination yet, so it was kind of an afterthought that this was going to become a political football. When we were doing the press day, I remember this. This was in December. We were at Universal Studios. He just won the presidency, and he just announced that morning we were going to do press, and he announced he was going to keep his name on the show. And so we go to do press day, and every single question was about the other boss. And you just saw NBC feeling this thing get politicized. And they'd had this big campaign. They had the idea of how they're going to roll out the show. They burned the episodes. They were airing them 2 a week and just no press. And it doesn't exist anymore. You can't find it. They've buried that entire show. And it was one of those things. And I won, which was amazing, because going through it, it was really interesting, Barry, because that was the first time I've ended up on the other side of this equation in competition. When you host, you don't risk anything. Even when it's hosting live, if you screw up, you're like, well, I can keep going with it. When you're the person out there competing, being judged, it was such a different experience, because you know, especially on a show like that, they're looking for you to screw up. And I remember, I don't know if you know Arthur Smith, A. Smith, he's the EP on Ninja Warrior. And, they knew I was going to do the show. It was NBC. And the last thing they said to me was, people like you. Don't that up. When I went on the show. And so, and when you film and you're on camera from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. and you're tired, and you get moments where you're pretty candid. And it was really interesting. And I felt like, wow, I knocked it out of the park. It really was fun, because I got to do stand-up, I got to do hosting, I got to draw on my medical degree, all these different things, and then to win it and have nobody really know it was a bummer. And so the day after I won, they announced the show was canceled. And within like 10 minutes, I got a call from Schwarzenegger who said, you're still going to be my apprentice. And it's been, 8 years now. And he helped me with my proposal in Austria. It's been amazing getting to be in his orbit and be around him, as, there are a handful of people who've reached that level. And to see it up front, and to see how at 77, he is still an animal. He is still so hardworking and so giving and so generous. It's unbelievable. He's a guy who, when you talk about, who's the best or who takes credit, you do anything with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he goes up and he's like, Betty, it's so amazing having Betty Katz. He's the greatest manager ever. I don't know where we'd be without you, Betty. Look at this guy. He's smiling over here. I'm the one who should be smiling because you. And he will just, he's so gracious and so generous and giving that you're like, I will do anything for that man. And you see how a lifetime of that, he's built up so many people who are fanatically dedicated to him because of the way he lives his life as one of the biggest, not just stars, but people, one of the best known people on the planet. It would be so easy for him to take all the credit, and instead he shares it. And it's one of those things when you see a guy like that, when you see a guy who will outwork anybody, when you see a guy who will go promote it, how can you be a diva, right? If the guy who's number one is setting that standard. So it's really cool to be around it, and it's very humbling.
Who'd you beat on the show?
Boy George. It was Boy George and me in the finals. And
who else was in the show?
Oh, Vince Neil from Motley Crue, Brooke Burke, Lisa Leslie, John Lovitz. What a character he is. It's impossible to talk to John Lovitz and not start talking like him. Carson Kressley, Carney Wilson, Snooki. It was an interesting
what's
hodgepodge.
the Favor Nation's payment for doing the Celebrity Apprentice? I mean, $25K an episode?
No, it wasn't. I think it was. It was shockingly cheap. And I might be wrong, but I think it was something around like 75 or 100K to do it. And then for winning, I think it got matched. So it wasn't. The payday wasn't huge. For me, what it was going to be getting to show a different side than you get to show on Ninja Warrior, and then no one saw it. But it ended up working out. It ended up giving me actually a lot of connections. And the other frustrating thing was that you got in with some billion-dollar brands. We got to do something for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal, which is their biggest brand. And like I really hit it off with the marketing execs, and they liked my campaign. But then because the show got politicized, nothing came of it. And so that was another thing where there are a lot of times you do something, and while the pay on the show wasn't great, you saw the opportunities that you could get from it.
How many times have you worked out with Arnold?
Oh God, 20, 30?
What's that like?
Intimidating as hell. It's because he was on something, he was doing, I think it was FUBAR. He's doing his show on Netflix, and they were like, hey, we can get you a trainer. And he's like, a trainer? Like, do you know I'm the greatest person ever to wear? He didn't. It's just interesting to get to work out with him because he'll give you pointers and then call you a little flabby baby at the same time. And anytime I'm around him, Barry, I still haven't gotten past the fact that there's a part of me that's always going, holy shit, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business. No matter where you are in that part of this journey, it's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you. And I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too.
I grew up with him on my bedroom wall, and now like you're sitting there talking to him, and he is that guy. It's really.
I had a few other things on my bedroom wall, but there wasn't Arnold. But that's
Elle McPherson, Paulina Poroskova. I didn't have a chance to work out with them though, so I'm happy to have it with Arnold. I don't know. My fiance would like me working out with Elle McPherson. God bless her though. She was great in the 80s.
Oh man, this is fun talking about hosting.
You
know why it's because I've done so many of these episodes and I never get into the heart and soul of this kind of thing, and a lot of people they want to book like hosting jobs. They want to figure out how to get them. So you don't mind if I gut it out a little bit here with you?
I love talking about hosting.
All right, so let's just talk about if you were teaching the art of auditioning and perfecting the art of hosting 101, like somebody going in for an audition to host, what's your first advice that's so different from an acting audition or anything else of that nature? And
well, I don't think it's that different in that you, just like in acting, you have to understand what's going on with the scene. With hosting, you have to understand, what am I hosting? What's the show? What's my role in this? Is this America's Funniest Home Videos? Is this Live Rescue where you're doing life or death situations? Is it Ninja Warriors? Is it a sport? Understanding what's going on. And I always think it's I always say, know where you're coming from and know where you're going out. So you know those 2 points, and then in between, all right, what business and what are we getting out here? Is this where we're meeting the contestants? Is this where I'm setting up the competition? I think it's once you understand, all right, this is my roadmap. Now figure out how do you bring yourself to that, because that's what they're looking for, is someone who can do the show, but then what do you bring that makes it unique? And for me, I'm an enthusiastic guy. And so like a show like Ninja Warrior is perfect, where I can come in and be loud and bombastic. That's where I live. There have been other shows I've gone out for. I did a roast of Dennis Rodman at the Friars Club. I'm a very nice, polite, pleaser guy. When I did that, I was so out of my element because I was trying to be mean. And I was trying to do something that I'd seen other people do that wasn't my wheelhouse, right? That wasn't me. And when I've seen guys like, then I saw Norm Macdonald, where you actually compliment him, or you see, wow, there are different ways to roast that I didn't understand.
Because remember, Red Buttons never had a dinner.
Yeah.
So it was clean, but always the tagline at the end, never got a dinner, or whatever it was. So you can write clean roast jokes. Like
yes.
Jeff Ross, we together brought the roast to Comedy Central with the old Friars. Freddie Roman and Jean-Pierre was the head guy. And the first roast was Drew Carey. And I'll never forget one of Jeff's lines that I thought was just the funniest line. It was clean. He was like, something like Milton Berle, Abe Vigoda, Freddie Roman. I've seen younger faces on Cash. It's so clean, but so beautiful.
Well, that's the challenge, and that's what's fun, and also knowing, like, all right, what's the tone of this show? Is it a Comedy Central show where they want you to curse or be mean, or is it? And so I think with hosting, it's really understanding, all right, what's the structure, understanding the structure of this, which I think goes to acting too. You have to know what's going on, and then figure out, all right, where do I bring myself to that? And I always want to have humor and be enthusiastic too, and figure out where can I put my stamp on it.
So before we get to the next level of it, like, where do you put your stamp on a segment as a as somebody who has comedy chops, like where do you figure out where to put your stamp on the segment?
So a lot of times, and this is where, okay, and very often, like they'll give you a script and say, this is, or bullet points on here's where we're going. And so then I'll look, all right, well, is there a name of an obstacle? Yeah, for instance, on Ninja Warrior. All right, what play on words could I do there? Or what is this guy's job? You know, he's a fireman. All right, there could be jokes about a hose or whatever. You start to, I think, again, it comes down to doing homework to understand where the areas that I can find the humor. And then, but I think a lot of it is, for me, planning jokes is great, but a lot of times I'm also, because I've done my homework, it's finding the jokes off of what someone else does or off of what my co-host says or what happens there. And to me, that's just a lot of that is kind of training your mind to always be looking, which, you know, that's why I think comedians can make great hosts, because you've been on stage, you've been in that area where, you know, I've got my set list, I can go off here, I can react in the moment. But I think where a lot of comedians get in trouble is leaning too heavily on the comedy and forgetting there's the business of the show, that you have to understand there are certain things that have to happen for this show to make sense to the people watching at home.
All right. So next part that I wanted to talk about that I think, again, I've never had a chance to talk about this, so I hope the audience finds this fascinating like I do. So most of the time hosts have a microphone and there's a contestant. And could you talk about what the proper mic technique is to go back and forth? Because a lot of times, like, contestants start talking before you get the mic there, and how do you rectify a situation where you're not in control of the contestant?
So if you have a chance, like, I will walk up to someone and say, hey, I'm going to ask you a couple questions here. Wait till I put the mic. I'll coach him if I get the chance.
Because the producers don't do it, or you can't.
Or the producers will, but still, I feel like it's on me. Right. Where it's like, let me explain what's going to happen here. Because a lot of times, you know, you're caught up in the business. You just go, hey, I'm going to talk to you. Like, they haven't been in an interview before. They don't know what's happening. So it's up to you. A lot of times I'll also use, like, I'll put my hand on a shoulder. Just to kind of give like some subtle physical cues of what's going on, or let them know. You know, a lot of times with other hosts too, I'll say, if I kind of put my hand up, that I'm telling you, they're telling me we got to wrap. So wrap it up. But it's really taking charge. And I think for the mic, you know, with, like, again, I'm super loud, so I've had to be cognizant of not going into the mic or blowing it out, being to the side. And it's like a singer, knowing when to kind of pull back, pull up. And make it easier for the audio guys.
But the singer knows, because the singer can hear the audio. You don't hear the audio.
Right. So, but you know, and especially having done comedy, you understand kind of where the mic is. And a lot of times it's just making sure, you know, you get it up and under. And really, I think of it as, it's like a flashlight. You're pointing it at their mouth, but not directly at it. And, you know, and again, that's something where, you know, the audio guys are supposed to be on top of that. But if you do that, you make everyone else's job easier. And like lighting, if someone's cheating around, you know, you'll grab them by the shoulder, peel them out, make sure they're not talking face to face. So you're just getting a profile, peel their shoulders out, cheat out. So you're like, hey, we've got a good 2-shot here, as I knock over the water, showing what a smooth host I am. So it's understanding, here's where the cameras are. Let me position this. Or, you know what, the lighting's not good here. Let's shift around and make sure they're in the light. Or if I see the camera coming around, opening up my shoulder, making sure their single's clear. And that goes to being able to be totally present with the person, but also understanding the mechanics of the show. Where are the cameras? Where's the audio? What do they need?
All right. So another thing you can't control as a host, you ask them the question, you reach over for them to answer, and they don't wrap it up in the time that you want them to wrap up the question. They're still talking. What's the technique?
Oh, Barry, I love this question. We're going to get back to it on the next episode of American Ninja. I'll get louder. You'll take it over. Or you kind of pull the mic back, go, oh, man, I could listen to you talk all day. And you know, the first rule.
But how do you know as a host where in the sentence do you wait till they finish one sentence and you're like...
You try to wait for a breath. A breath is always a good spot. And it doesn't matter if they're in the middle of a thought. Sometimes you're like, especially because you'll have the IFBs, the ears, where someone's going, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. And you're kind of waiting. And eventually you just pull it. And it's, you know, the other thing you can kind of do is, I don't know if Dennis is in close, you're like, you give a lot of expressions here, letting him know, hey man, I'm trying to give you some nonverbal. And then eventually you just pull it. And never, ever give someone the mic. Never, ever, ever. Never.
Never let somebody take the mic.
Never.
Because you see that happen a lot of times.
The one person I let do it, I host strongman competitions for Arnold, and the Mountain from Game of Thrones, Hafthor Björnsson, who's 6'8", 420 pounds. One time he took the mic, and I thought, okay, there's not much I can do right now. You are an enormous man. That was the one time I think I let someone take the mic.
Next thing about hosting that I want you to talk about that I think is really important is the IFB. Could you explain the IFB and explain how challenging that can be sometimes to have somebody talking in your ear? The audience can't hear it, but you're in the middle of something, and when you're in the middle of a sentence, and how you what's the best way to handle that, and how to become the best you can be in the segment when they're saying, hey, listen, get out. We got to get out.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So I think it's, and that comes with experience too. I remember on my first show with Screenplay, we'd have the ear in, and a lot of times, you know, you'd be talking to someone, dramatic moment. And at first it is distracting because you hear someone and your natural inclination is to go, wait, what did you just say? But eventually, and the other thing is too, you're going to talk to whoever it is, the showrunner, the director, who's going to be in your ear and be like, all right, you know, what are you looking for where you guys kind of understand?
But
and
you know how some of the directors, they talk into your ear when you're talking.
Yeah.
They don't wait till when the other person's talking. And that's horrifying. Like, it's like you're in the middle of your sentence and somebody's talking in your ear, as opposed to when you're like this and then they're talking to you. That's fine, because now I got the direction. I know what to do. Do you get upset when a director talks when you're talking?
Good directors will usually wait, or they'll be like, out in 5, quick. Other people will talk more, and eventually, you know, either you go talk to them and say, hey man, it makes it hard to do my job. But eventually, I think the more you do it, the more you get kind of that ability to multitask, because the other thing you don't want to do is be listening to them and miss a moment when someone's like, and that's when my cat died. And you don't hear it, like, oh, that's great. Well, you know, thanks for sharing that. And so I think it is a skill that you eventually, you do develop over years of doing it. But it's, you know, if it's your first hosting gig, definitely practice with someone talking to you while talking. Get that ear and tell the director, hey, I haven't done this a lot. Please understand, you know, it may throw me off. And the reality is, I think most directors will understand. I've had a couple who got real panicky, and occasionally there was a time I pulled an ear out. I was just like, I just got to, I'm not able to do this right now, and put it back in. And it wasn't in a live show. But there are times when you kind of have to, after you wrap that scene, go up and go, hey, that didn't work for me. Here's what I need. What do you need? What was I doing that you know got you to that state?
And the last thing about hosting that I want you to talk to the audience about is learning and mastering the teleprompter. And if you could explain to the audience how the teleprompter works on a show where the teleprompter is in the camera screen, and the best way to figure that out to where you're not reading, what would you tell people that they can do to learn that skill and learn it so it doesn't feel like they're reading?
That's the challenge. And I think one of the best things you can do is go over the copy. That's the words that are going to be in that prompter. And whoever's writing it, try to make sure it's in your voice. Because I think the biggest challenge is when someone writes something in a way you don't speak. And so when it comes out, it's not coming out naturally. I think, again, it's one of those things where it's repetition. It's doing it as many times as you can to get comfortable. I think I've been pretty comfortable, you know, speaking out loud, reading out loud. It's a skill I'm comfortable with. I worked with people who were dyslexic, who really struggled to read the prompter. And for them, a lot of times, what they would do is say, all right, you can change the size of the font. Maybe you want more words, maybe you want less. They could put breaks in where it's sometimes because they couldn't, as they're reading, they had difficulty with the punctuation or marks, and they would just make it all a read-on sentence. Like if you put a break here or put, an ellipses. So it's kind of figuring out like, all right, how do you read? How do you need to see that copy to make it most digestible for you? And then taking reps. And then the other thing I like to do is read it, know kind of where you're going, but also it's okay to summarize, to bullet point it. And a lot of times if it's things, I'll be like, hey, just write, intro, obstacle description, outro. And if there's anything in particular, it's a Wells Fargo Active Cash credit card that's donating $10,000, put that verbiage in there. The rest of it, I can go on my own.
All right, let's go way back for a second. Tell us where you grew up, the economic dynamic, and what was your first inspiration to getting into this crazy up business?
So I grew up in Denver, Colorado. Dad was a doctor. Mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we were comfortable. Grew up though, Denver. I didn't know entertainment was not on my radar. I loved watching TV. I loved watching game shows. I loved comedy, but I didn't see myself in any of it. I just didn't seem like a career. And kind of the way we were brought up was very much, hey, work your ass off, achieve academics, be serious. That's the key to success in life, and not entertainment. And so growing up, I did sports, I did school, and I didn't, do any speech. I didn't do anything creative. I didn't do any performances. And it wasn't until I was in med school in New York when I had a buddy who was doing open mics. He was doing a bringer show, and he's like, hey, come on, I need a body. Will you come to my show? And I was like, my God, that looks fun. And he's like, yeah, just, write some jokes and do it. And so I kind of started doing comedy just as a release from the stress of med school. And then when I graduated and I got into residency and I realized my heart wasn't in it, it got to this point where I just realized I need to figure out my life. I need to take a break because I'd been on this track, my whole life where it was just work, school, med school, become a doctor. And so that was when I thought, what can I do how do I clear my mind? And I thought, well, I've never done anything creative. I'll go out to LA and do stand-up. And when I moved out here, I'd done stand-up probably 10 times. And I just came out and was like, I'm going to throw my heart into this and see what happens. So it wasn't planned. It wasn't as though I had this grand vision. And even when I came out, I thought, I'll do this for a year. I'll grow up and I'll go back to being a doctor. And then I just kind of realized it was some open mics where I was just like, I heard someone laugh at one of the things I said. And I thought, this is the greatest feeling in the world. But I will say that the comedian who I listened to on the drive out here was Brian Regan. I put his CD on nonstop. And I remember seeing him when I was doing my residency at Comedy Works. My buddy's like, hey, let's go. You got to check this guy out, Brian Regan. And I remember watching him and laughing harder than I'd ever laughed. And it was probably, 35 minutes into his set where I go, he hasn't cursed once. And I've never laughed this hard. And I just remember watching him do it and seeing how the joy he brought. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's who I would love to be. And I don't know, I just saw Brian a few months ago and he's still my favorite. I love watching him on stage.
And so you're like, you're following your father's footsteps as a doctor, and you have to figure out, okay, I'm gonna weed myself out of being a doctor. You're in the medical profession, and I don't know how much our audience knows about this, but you had something devastating and life-threatening happening to you. Yeah. And tell us how you overcome that.
I leave medicine, and the summer of 2000, I started getting pain in my hands. And then over 18 months, my body just fell apart. And I gained like 50 pounds. I could barely move my neck. I had pain in my feet. I wasn't working out. And I went into and I'd seen doctors. I was being checked out and I was home and my dad he saw me and he goes, "You look like goddamn Quasimodo." He's like, "You're not going to be able to ski." He's like, "Let's get you an injection in your feet so you can get on the mountain." And the doctor was like, "Well, we're going to take an x-ray." And they put the x-ray up and he goes, "How long have you had rheumatoid arthritis?" And I'm like, "I don't have it." He's like, "This is RA." I'm like, "I was just tested for this 3 months ago. I don't have RA." He goes, "Get checked again." And I got checked and sure enough, I had RA and I started on treatment and it was like it gave me my life back. And then, I don't know if you're going for, and then I had cancer. But what was interesting was they found the cancer because of the rheumatoid arthritis. I was having some discomfort in my chest. And so the treatment I'm on for the RA is an immune suppressant, which means you're more susceptible to infection. And I went and the doctor was looking, he's like, "Your chest x-ray is clear, but because you're immune suppressed, there could be something else going on. Let's get a CAT scan." And so I went and got a CAT scan and the ER doctor's like, you're fine. Your lungs are clear. Go home. And then the next morning, the radiologist calls and he goes, "Hey, your lungs are fine, but I was looking at your CAT scan. There's a mass on your kidney and there's an 85% chance it's malignant. You need to get it checked out now." And that was on a Saturday, like Saturday morning at like 9 a.m. And I remember just hanging the phone up and starting to call oncologists. And again, I'm a doctor. My dad's a doctor. I had friends who were doctors and nobody's answering because it's a weekend. And it was just this surreal moment where I felt like, "Hey, why are you not answering? I might have cancer." And you realize, yeah, everyone who calls an oncologist is in that same boat. And it was the first time when the RA was one thing, but the cancer was really what made me understand what it's like being on the other side of the stethoscope, not as a caregiver, but as a patient. And it was really humbling. And to, go in and have surgery and it was supposed to be laparoscopic where they just make tiny incisions, but they couldn't get at it. So they had to slice open my belly and it was like a 7-hour surgery. And they didn't know for 5 days. And the doctor came in and he's like, "It was malignant. It's cancer. But I think we got it all. And there's a 95% chance you're cured. Go with God." And so it was, as cancer stories go, it's about as good an outcome as you can get to actually find out you have cancer. You're probably cured in the same breath. But it was, it was a reminder of just, and, obviously I have a chronic disease, so I understood like your health is precious, but man, nothing's guaranteed. The interesting thing though, is a lot of people kind of go through, a cancer awakening. And as I reevaluated everything, I realized I'm doing what I love. This, if my life were to end, I would be like, this is a job I'd still want to be doing. So that was one of those things that was a really good feeling, is to feel like, all right, that really was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. If after that, you're like, I can't wait to get on stage and host shows.
1,
2,
3,
4, 5,
5,
6.
6 degrees of separation.
Awesome. 6 degrees of separation. I'm going to mention some names
All right.
and tell me what comes to mind. Could
Okay.
be a word, a sentence, anything you're feeling. Ken Jeong.
So stole my thunder because I was the Dr. Comic before he was. He was still practicing at Kaiser. And then he does The Hangover and reveals everything, or not much, but, he showed it. And everyone thinks of him as the Dr. Comedian. And I'm like, I was that well before Ken.
Jim Norton.
Jim Norton is one of the fastest minds I've ever seen in comedy. And Jay Moore, I know you're good buds with Jay Moore. Jay Moore's another one. I think those are two of the
I
guys.
represented both of them.
I love them. I could listen to those guys. And I think their stand-up is great. But I like them like on podcasts or radio shows, Jim and Sam. And, when Jay was doing his show, I was just like, there's just a feeling of he can go anywhere, and Norton too, where their minds are so fast. And I think I'm a pretty quick guy. They're just on a different planet. And I adore Jim, and I'm so happy he found his wife.
Johnny Carson.
The best. I mean, as hosts go, I still think he's the best who's ever done a talk show. I think he just always felt like I always say when I'm hosting something, I want it to feel like I'm throwing a party and everyone's having a good time. And I don't think anyone did it better than Carson.
Bert Kreischer.
Bert, I have such respect for Bert. I've known him, 20 years. Talk about a guy who has built everything he's earned through I mean, every time you see him, he's trying something new. And he had the phone number. He's like, people can text me here. I'm doing streaming. I'm on Vine or whatever it was. And there's a guy who I think enjoys every second of what he's doing even more than I do. I love watching Bert.
I just got to see him the other night after the roast. It was wonderful. All right. Your proudest moment in show business?
Winning Apprentice. Winning Apprentice was cool because it really felt like it wasn't just like it. I got to use everything I learned in Hollywood. It was like everything I'd learned in life, like from medicine, from just how to interact with people. It really was a fun challenge, especially because I was probably the least famous person on the show, and I think to have won it and to have stayed friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger and to I'm going to Vienna in a few weeks to host his Austrian World Summit on Climate Change, where I'll be bringing up presidents and prime ministers and heads of companies. And it's such a surreal experience to then be, hey, I'm hosting at the Laugh Factory on Saturday night, bringing up Dane Cook, which is cool. And then I'm bringing up the president of Austria at a podcast. And it really is cool. And it goes back to saying yes to things. Like you never know where things are going to lead in this business. And it's really, I think the things that you think are going to be home runs, or I'm sure you've been a part of things where like this is going to be the biggest movie of all time. It flops, and then other things where you're like, we're just going to throw this away, and all of a sudden it turns into something magical. It's kind of it's what's fun about this business is it's you're always one lottery ticket away. Tomorrow could be the day you get that big thing. Your biggest disappointment in show business and how you used it to fuel yourself to the next level. So right around the time, just before I got the screenplay, my first hosting gig, I got cast in a commercial. And it was for a pay-as-you-go cell phone service, Net 10. And I got cast in this, and we went, and this was what was crazy. We went to Stan Winston, who did the effects for Alien and Terminator, the greatest special effects guy. They made a custom suit for me that was like $250,000. And it was this muscle-bound superhero suit. And we shot, over a week, we shot these 4 commercials. We shot, I did ringtones. I was doing little teaser commercials. It was going to be a massive campaign. And I was so excited. And like, people were like, did you tell people? And there was a part of me where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to hold on to this. And sure enough, before the commercial aired, the ad agency that was doing it for Net 10 got fired. And one commercial aired for like a week. And that was it. And it was one of those things because also I didn't have anything at that point. And national commercials back then, this was probably going to be probably $500,000 a year, if not more, and had the potential to be like, you've seen, Flo and Progressive, Stephanie Courtney, these people where you're like, I'm going to be the face of this brand. It's going to be amazing. And one commercial aired for a week. And it was just that but then I got my hosting job. And so it really was an early on lesson of don't count your chickens until they're hatched. And, no high too high, no low too low, because I don't think you get one chance. I don't think you get one big break. Some people do, but most people get a lot of little breaks that eventually add up, and people are like, where have you been? You're like, well, I've been here for 20 years. You just now are discovering me.
So last question. What advice do you have for the young person growing up in a place like Denver, Colorado, just a regular, normal, comfortable household with a doctor and a housewife or whatever it is, and to have the kind of amazing career you've had as far as a stand-up, a voiceover guy, a host, and somebody who faced so much adversity and came out on the other side.
Have good parents, I think would be my advice. Short of that, though, I think, you know, what's interesting is the barriers to entry to our business are lower than ever. We all have a broadcast studio in our hands that can shoot 4K, that could reach people around the globe. And you're seeing people who've built up these followings on TikTok from, you know, a farm in Georgia where there are no limits. It's figuring out what is it that you bring that's unique. So I think it's if you have an interest, start doing it. And when people ask what's the secret to stand up or hosting, it's do it and do it a million times. Do it until it's second nature, but do it. You don't just sit at home writing and walk out and deliver an HBO special in your first gig. You do it by failing and eventually getting better. So my advice is take your swings. My dad said it best: life is short. Do what makes you happy. And as I always talk about with medicine, I'm so glad I made that choice, because otherwise I'm sure I would have had a wonderful career as a doctor. But I always would have wondered what would have happened. What would have happened if I'd gone and taken my swing? And now I'm out here. It is never lost on me how ridiculous it is that we get paid to do what we do. How awesome it is that I get to go on set at Ninja Warrior and there's a, multi-million-dollar set. There are people filming it. They're bringing us Starbucks lattes or whatever you want. It's like, this is comical how much fun this is and how much I love doing what we do. I was just at the Punchline in Atlanta doing stand-up, and I won't lie, the 6 p.m. show on Saturday was only about 40 people. But God damn it, it was fun. It really was fun. And it's just, I just hope everyone can, thanks, Dennis. Right in my big, no, that's cool. Just kidding, I'm going on too long. This is what I do.
Just finish that thing.
I really think it is. I just wish everyone could be as lucky as we are to get to love what they do as much as we do, because it's the best.
Matt, amazing.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you so much.
It is a pleasure to get to meet you, man.
It's a pleasure to meet you. What an honor, really. It truly is. And
Thanks,
I
bud.
wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.